Hello everyone. Enjoy this relaxing moment with Surly Tales. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments while you watch. Many years ago, in the beautiful city of Asaba, there lived a beautiful couple, Dicky and Any. This couple had met in the university and married immediately after graduation. They loved each other and did everything together, never keeping secrets from one another. However, something troubled them deeply. They had no child of their own. Dicky was a very wealthy businessman. He sold cars and owned several showrooms, while his wife, Any, was a banker. They were living their dream life. Dicky and Any visited different clinics to determine the issue, but they were always told they were both fine. Despite this, they were deeply bothered. Although Dicky's mother had not yet started pressuring her, Any knew it was only a matter of time before she did. Any made it a point of duty to pray every night before bed. She made praying at midnight a normal routine in their house. She prayed fervently, hoping that one day she would carry her own child. As the days went by, she ensured her husband also joined her in prayer, telling him it was better to pray together so that God could hear their hearts cry. Dicky and Any were always present at their friends' children's christenings, and many of their friends often asked them to be godparents. They always obliged, believing this might pave the way for them to have their own child. They also made it a duty to always sow seeds of kindness to every baby they met, believing that the prayers of children would be answered and pave the way for their own miracle. After multiple failed IVF attempts, Any gave up. She couldn't continue taking the medications. The injections were too much for her. She told her husband, Dicky, that she wasn't going to try any more IVF procedures. Instead, she would wait on God to give her their bundle of joy. That was it. She stopped visiting the clinics, continued going to work, and kept praying, hoping that one day her miracle would come. As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, Dicky and Any finally had a reason to smile. A few days before their 5th wedding anniversary, Any started throwing up and was taken to the hospital. To their greatest surprise, after a series of tests, it was confirmed that Any was pregnant. They screamed with excitement and cried tears of joy. Because of the good news, Dicky decided to take Any on a vacation out of Asaba to celebrate the arrival of their miracle. They spent time bonding, reminiscing about old times and thanking God for his gift. After some time, they returned to Asaba and continued their life as normal. Any ensured she never missed any of her antenatal appointments. She took everything seriously, prayed constantly for her baby, and confessed positive things over her child. She even prepared a beautiful room for her daughter after confirming the baby's gender. She was so excited to be giving birth to a baby girl. At her appointed time, Any gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Mess. They threw a grand party for her christening, inviting everyone. Dicky left the gates open, allowing anyone passing by to join in the celebration. As the days went by, Any diligently took care of Mess, closely observing her development. However, when it was time for Mess to crawl, she didn't. Concerned, Any called her mother, who reassured her that some children take longer to meet developmental milestones. "Take it slow," her mother said. "Don't pressure yourself. You already know Mess is a miracle baby. Please don't stress." Encouraged, Any patiently cared for her baby, hoping Mess would crawl and walk at the appointed time. But when Mess turned 1.5 years old and still wasn't crawling or walking, Any and Dicky became worried. They took Mess to the hospital, where it was confirmed that she had a slow developmental process. The doctors explained that while Mess was not like a regular child, she would still walk and speak eventually. It was a gradual process, and they were advised not to give up on her. Although they felt defeated and pained, Dicky and Any encouraged themselves, reminding each other it was better to have a child than not to have one at all. Any decided to resign from her job to dedicate herself fully to caring for Mess. She took it upon herself to take care of her daughter, knowing fully well that M might not be able to communicate with anyone. Although M had not yet started talking, she could now crawl and gradually take steps. However, she wasn't yet speaking. M often watched other children play outside, but she was too scared to join them since she couldn't communicate. She always watched them from a distance, and this deeply disturbed Any. Any made it a point of duty to always pray and teach M the little things she could. She showed her beautiful picture books and tried to call out the words. Any believed in her heart that even if M couldn't speak, she could understand, and that thought kept her going. To help M socialize, her parents often invited their godchildren over to play with her. At least, this was within the safety of their home. Among the godchildren, M was especially fond of Anita. Aside from her parents' names, Anita was the only name she could pronounce. Anita also sincerely liked M. They were age mates, unlike the other godchildren, who were older. Anita always took care of M and called her my sister. Because of their bond, Anita spent most of her days with M, which made Any excited as Anita contributed greatly to M's development. M started picking up some words gradually as she spent time with Anita. Out of gratitude, Dicky and Any paid all of Anita's school fees and provided for her every need. Anita, in turn, made it a point of duty to always come straight to M after school. This gesture deeply moved Dicky and Any, who were grateful for how Anita treated M like her little sister. Anita and M lived like sisters, and Anita made sure M never felt lonely. M's illness growing up inspired Anita to want to become a doctor, with the dream of treating M's condition. Anita often told him, "Don't worry. When I become a doctor, I'm going to make you strong like me and powerful like me." M would respond with excitement, saying, "I can't wait for you to be a doctor because I'm going to be your best friend." As days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years, the two girls grew up like twins. Although M was a bit reserved due to her condition, she was content being close to Anita. She only spoke to her parents and Anita, as most people teased her for behaving like a child. Anita, however, genuinely cared for her. Though Anita initially planned to study medicine, she later chose law, feeling an irresistible pull toward it. Anita took her time to explain her decision to M to ensure M didn't feel betrayed, knowing fully well she had promised to become a doctor. The girls grew older, and Anita eventually found someone who wanted to marry her, a fellow university friend named He was a medical doctor and one of the best surgeons in Asaba. Anita often joked with M, saying, "Since I didn't become a medical doctor, I made sure to marry one, so you'll always be in safe hands." M was thrilled by this and would reply, "Thank you, sister." She always felt and believed Anita was her real sister. When Dicky and Any heard about Anita's wedding, they were so excited that they gifted her a duplex close to their house. They wanted to ensure Anita remained close to M, knowing Anita was the only person, aside from them, whom M trusted. Unknown to everyone, M had another friend, Simon, the gardener's son. Simon, who was 2 years older than M, was drawn to her beauty and kindness. He admired her natural smile and gentle heart. Simon had always noticed M sitting by the window while he worked in the garden with his father. Over time, he made an effort to talk to her whenever she stepped outside. M became close to Simon because of his warm demeanor. Simon, who was also a medical student, spent time with M during breaks from university. This gave M immense joy, as Simon became a confidant, just like Anita. When Simon completed his university education, he told his father that he wanted to marry M. However, his father objected, claiming M's illness might be hereditary and could affect future generations. Simon tried to explain to his father that her condition wasn't hereditary and posed no such risks, but his father remained adamant. He told Simon, "You can't get married to her, and that is final. I don't care whether they are ready to give you anything or sponsor the wedding, you simply can't marry her." "A sick lady? Can't you see the way she behaves? She doesn't even talk her age, she still talks like a child of 18 years. Please, and please, remove your mind from her. You can't get married to her," Simon's father said. This broke Simon's heart. He felt devastated but didn't want to go against his father's rules. Simon decided that he would gradually try to convince his father to let him marry M. "You can't get married to her over my dead body. So if you want me to die, go ahead and marry her," his father said. These words broke Simon further, and he decided to leave the city of Asaba to pursue his master's degree. He believed that leaving Asaba would help him take his mind off M. Meanwhile, M's parents were deeply concerned. She wasn't getting any younger, and they knew she needed someone to care for her. Her father, Dicky, felt strongly that the only person they could trust to marry M would be someone who would genuinely care for her. One day, while Dicky was in his office signing documents and thinking about his daughter, one of his godsons, A, came in and greeted him. As they conversed, Dicky asked AA about school, life, and his future plans. AA replied that everything was fine and that he had just returned home from school. Dicky, pleased, asked A, "So, what's next for you?" A responded, "I actually came to see you and to know how Em is doing." Dicky was surprised and laughed. "You still remember Em?" he asked. A replied, "Of course. She's like a sister to me. You're my godfather." Dicky smiled and said, "She's doing well." Then, to Dicky's shock, A said, "I'd like to ask for Em's hand in marriage." Dicky was taken aback and thought to himself, does he know about her condition? Wanting to be transparent, he explained everything about Em's health to AA and asked if he was still comfortable with the idea of marrying her. AA replied confidently, "Yes, I already knew. From when we were small, I understood that Em had a little health challenge and needed proper attention." Dicky was overjoyed. He trusted AA because he had known him since childhood. That evening, he shared the news with his wife, Any, who was equally thrilled. Both parents quickly informed Em about AA's proposal, though Any was slightly hesitant. She knew her daughter wasn't entirely ready for marriage, but they also feared that if they didn't get her married soon, she might grow too old to find a suitor. As time went on, A began visiting Em frequently. At first, Em regarded him as a stranger, but AA made a conscious effort to connect with her. He showed her his genuine feelings and love, and gradually, Em fell for him. They laughed, bonded, and spent quality time together. Dicky and Any were ecstatic. This was the moment they had long prayed for. In a few months, Em and AA got married. Though AA initially wanted to move Em to his home, Dicky suggested building them a duplex close to his house. Dicky wanted to ensure he could keep an eye on his daughter and ensure she was safe. AA treated Em kindly, taking care of her and providing everything she needed. Em was happy and enjoyed her married life. When Anita visited, she noticed Em's happiness and was grateful that her friend had found someone who truly loved her. Dicky and Any were proud that their daughter had found love and that AA was genuinely taking care of her. One day, while returning home from a new foundation they had just launched, Dicky and Any were involved in a fatal accident and tragically lost their lives. The news devastated everyone, Anita, their families, and their community. Dicky and Any had been pillars of their society, providing for the needy and helping countless people. Their funeral was massive, as many came to mourn the loss of such beloved individuals. However, a few months after the funeral, AA's true nature was revealed. He moved Em to the servants' quarters and brought his longtime girlfriend, Ella, into the house. He began living with Ella as though she were his wife, while Em was treated as a housemaid. A forced Em to do all the household chores, and Em cried every day. On a blessed day, it told him, "My dear, I never came here to get married to you. I only came here for the money, knowing fully well that nobody was ready to get married to you. So, I just had to play along and wait for your parents to leave the picture. Then, I will inherit everything that belongs to you." These words broke Em's heart. Nobody had ever seen this side of AA before. He had come pretending to love her, acting sincere and kind. Em cried every day as A made sure she cleaned the house every single day, whether it was necessary or not. Not only had AA turned Em into a housemaid, but he also ensured that no one came to visit her, not even Anita. He instructed the security man not to open the gate for anyone and to tell Anita that Em was either fine or sleeping if she came around. Anita grew suspicious because she had visited countless times, and each time, the gate man would dismiss her, claiming Em was asleep. Whenever Anita tried calling Em's phone, it was switched off. Anita became anxious, wondering what had gone wrong. She couldn't understand why Em's life, which had been fine when her father was alive, had suddenly taken such a bad turn after her parents' death. Unbeknownst to Anita, AA had confiscated Em's phone and turned it off so that no one could contact her. He had effectively isolated Em and reduced her to a living maid, forcing her to do everything Ella, his girlfriend, demanded. One day, Simon returned to Asaba and decided to visit his father at Mr. Dicky's mansion. Upon arriving, he noticed that Dicky and Any were not around. Curious, he asked his father what had happened. His father broke the sad news about their tragic accident and how AA had taken over everything, including turning M into a maid and bringing his girlfriend to live in the house. Simon was heartbroken by the news and asked his father, "How come no one has reported this? How come no one has said anything?" His father replied, "Nobody dares to. AA has threatened everyone in this compound." Simon, angered by the situation, declared, "I don't work for him, and I will make sure I do something about this." That evening, Simon sneaked into the basement to see M. As he approached, he overheard AA discussing plans to retrieve all of Mr. Dicky's documents to transfer all the properties into his name. Shocked by what he had just heard, Simon quietly entered the basement and found him. When M saw him, she ran to him and gave him a huge hug, asking, "How are you? Where have you been?" Simon explained everything but assured her that the most important thing now was to get her out of the house and secure her father's documents before AA could get his hands on them. That night, while the security man was asleep, Simon helped M sneak out of the compound. They ran as fast as they could to the main building. Once there, they tried different passwords to unlock Mr. Dicky's safe. Suddenly, M remembered her father always telling her, "The key to everything is your birthday, my princess." She quickly entered her birth date and the lock opened. M gathered all the documents, locked the safe, and they immediately took the documents to Anita's house. When they arrived, they banged on Anita's door. Anita, initially scared, hesitated to open the door until M called out, "It's your sister." Anita opened the door and was shocked to see Simon with M. Panicking, she asked, "What's going on? I've always come looking for you, but they told me you were sleeping. What happened?" M explained everything that had happened to her, and Simon also detailed what he had overheard. Anita was heartbroken. She couldn't believe that AA, who had been welcomed warmly by everyone, could betray them in such a cruel way. Mr. Dicky even gave him a car and so many other things. How could he turn his own daughter into a maid in her father's house? Anita exclaimed, unable to comprehend the situation. Anita quickly advised M to return to the house so AA wouldn't suspect anything, as they needed to play smart to catch him in the act. She pleaded with Simon, "Please take him back now. We must act as though we know nothing." Simon agreed and snuck M back into the house, returning her to the basement. He stayed with her for a while, calming her down and ensuring she felt safe. Once M fell asleep, Simon quietly left. That night, Anita couldn't sleep. She took her time going through Mr. Dicky's documents. While reviewing them, she discovered that Mr. Dicky had left a clause in his will. It stated that if AA ever maltreated or abused M because of her condition, he would be stripped of all the wealth he had acquired through the marriage and would be forced to leave with nothing. Marriage meant he was supposed to leave with nothing. The moment Anita saw this clause in the will, she jumped with excitement. She couldn't believe the problem could be solved with just one signature AA had unknowingly made. She was so glad. Her husband came out and asked her what was making her so excited, and she explained everything that had happened. She also told him how AA was going to pay for his deceit. Unaware of the clause, the next morning AA and his boys quickly went to Mr. D's house and searched everywhere for the documents, but they couldn't find anything. The house remained as it was, and they were shocked. They wondered if Mr. D had left the documents with his lawyer or if there was some other way he had secured them. They thought to himself, "I can just invite the lawyer and pretend M wants to know what's in the will." After making up his mind, he quickly invited Mr. Dicky's lawyer. When the lawyer arrived, he told AA that Mr. D had instructed him to hand over everything to Anita, as Anita was supposed to be M's lawyer. Therefore, any information about Mr. Dicky or his properties had to go through Anita. This made AA furious because he had always tried to keep Anita away from M, fearing that Anita would learn the truth about what was happening. Still, he needed those documents, so he invited Anita over. When Anita arrived, she pretended not to know anything about what M had told her. AA asked Anita about Mr. Dicky's properties and the will. Anita replied, "I don't have any information about the properties or the will. If you need anything, you'll have to speak with them. She's the only one who has access to that information." Frustrated, I asked Anita, "Why are you all turning me in circles? I know M is just a child, so she can't possibly handle this alone." Anita responded calmly, Whatever Mr. D assigned to you can only be yours if M decides to give it to you. Otherwise, you're not entitled to anything. This infuriated A further, and he screamed at Anita. Please don't joke with me. Where are the properties? Mr. D also assigned some things to me, and I'm the rightful owner of those items. Anita looked at him and said, the things Mr. D assigned to you can only be claimed with M's approval. Aside from that, you have no right to them. Angry and offended, he yelled, I'd like to talk to M directly. Invite your wife so we can settle this. When M was brought in, she acted surprised. They asked her, why are you looking like this? What's going on? Why do you seem so unaware? Anita interjected, you said you wanted to speak to her, so here she is. Talk to her and resolve this. M told A directly, I have nothing to give you. My father never told me anything about leaving anything for you. A became enraged and threatened to take them to court. Anita calmly replied, no problem. We'll see you in court. On the court day, unlike what AA expected, the proceedings didn't go in his favor. He had thought taking M and Anita to court would grant him access to more documents, but unknown to him, he had already signed an agreement with Mr. D. When the case was presented to the judge, AA was found guilty of fraud and deception. He was stripped of all the wealth he had acquired during the marriage. Anita made sure AA and Ella were thrown out of the house and warned them never to return. If they did, they would face jail time. Anita was overjoyed and thankful that M had come to her that night. She was also grateful to Simon for overhearing AA's conversation, as it had saved them a lot of trouble. M, too, was grateful to Simon. Simon had always loved M, and though M didn't initially know what it felt like to love someone, after the betrayal she experienced with AA, she realized Simon truly cared for her. After a long argument with his father, Simon was allowed to marry M. They lived happily, with Simon taking care of her, pampering her, and ensuring she never felt less of herself. Anita also discovered during the court proceedings that Mr. D had willed several properties to her as a token of gratitude for always standing by his daughter. With this, Anita was able to open her own foundation, fulfilling a dream she had always cherished. Later, Simon and M welcomed their baby boy. Simon, as a medical doctor, ensured that M received all the care and support she needed during her pregnancy. He provided her with vitamins, a balanced diet, and constant emotional support, protecting her dignity and happiness. And so, they lived happily ever after. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing you heartwarming stories almost every day. Thank you for your support, and see you soon.